I'm Max Sterling. Welcome to Larpgasm. I recently had one of my subscribers ask me, Max, how do you keep all the numbers straight in your head when they're being yelled at you in combat? Well, I realize that a lot of you don't necessarily play boffer LARPs where numbers are being yelled in combat to represent how much damage is being done to you. Some of you play hit location based, theatrical combat, and all kinds of other different options. But for those of us that play games where you have to count numbers in combat, things are a little bit different. You know, if you're at a hit location based LARP and someone hits your left arm and you lose it, someone hits your left leg and you lose it, they hit you in the chest once or twice and you die, that's pretty easy to keep track of. You don't have to yell numbers or anything, it's just implied, this is hit, this is gone. But for games, it's mostly American based games where you have hit points and maybe mana and things like that where you can cast your magic from. It's much more like a Dungeons and Dragons style of gameplay. So in those games, yeah, you need to keep track of your hit points and maybe your mana and maybe other things as well, spirit points or who knows what your system has. But basically, when you're in combat, say I have 15 hit points and someone is swinging for 10 points of damage. So they swing their weapon and hit me and they say 10 edge. Well, I take 10 points of damage. Well, if I have 15 points, 15 minus 10 is 5 points left. So I know I'm clearly fighting a superior foe, and if they hit me one more time, I'm dead. If I have 15 hit points, I should be looking to fight things that are probably swinging for like 1 or 2 points of damage. That way, I'm going to have a much easier time surviving in combat. If I'm fighting someone swinging for 10 or maybe even 15 points, 1 or 2 hits, and I'm toast. So if someone's swinging for that much damage, you're probably in over your head, so you can use that as sort of a gauge as to should I be here or not. And if you are there, I hope you brought a lot of backup or ways to heal yourself. However, this can get very complicated when you have, say, 15 points, and this person's swinging for 2 points, this person's swinging for 3 points, and this person's swinging for 5 points. So how do you keep that all straight in your head? If you're sitting there and someone's like 2 edge, 3 edge, 5 fire. So I can tell you just took 10 points of damage, but you may not be able to do the math that fast. I mean, it's 5 plus 3 plus 2. 5 and 3 is 8. 8 and 2 is 10. Boom. You have to know how to do the math fast. So when it comes down to these boffer style LARPs, you have to be good at multitasking. And some of these skills that are going to help you do this better, you're not going to just learn at LARP once a month or a couple times a year. This is stuff you either already have to be good at, you had to have been doing for years before, or you have to practice at it. Now, me, coming from a tabletop background, I play a lot of riffs, I play a lot of Shadowrun. I'm used to just seeing this sea of dice cast in front of me and having to add up numbers fast, okay? Counting by sixes, adding up 5 different types of dice, D20, a D10, a D8, a D4, 3 D6s, and just being able to look at the numbers and add them immediately. This comes with a lot of practice and a lot of play. If you don't come from a background like that, it's probably going to be a little bit harder from you. If you're very good at math, you're very good at numbers, you're very good at head math, then this type of stuff may not be a big deal, as long as you're also good at multitasking. So basically this is something where you're either good at it or you're not. But if you're not, you can work at it. If you don't play the tabletop games, like I said, this may be something where you almost have to put yourself through drills occasionally. I know that doesn't sound appealing, but if you want to get better at it, you're going to have to practice. So sit there, do math, learn to count by 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on, and just learn how to count in those sort of increments so you can count, round off, do things very quickly. Now, if adding isn't easy for you and subtracting maybe becomes easier, then subtract. Hey, I have 100 points. I just got hit for 10, 8, and 7, so I know I'm down 25 points. You can subtract it as well. I prefer to add because I think adding is easier, at least for me, but you can do it either way. You just have to know what the numbers are and be able to add them up very quickly in your head. So that's one thing. And if that's not appealing to you, then that's okay. There's other ways to do this. Now, another way to go about doing things is to basically just go with the flow. Now, combat at boffer LARP, it can be intense, but it's not always intense. If you're fighting one other person or maybe 2 people, you know the numbers they're calling. So if you have, say, 50 hit points, this person is calling 10 points, this person is calling 5 points. You know this person has to hit you 5 times, this person has to hit you 10 times before you're at 0. So just add it up like that. It works incredibly easy when you're dealing with those big whole numbers, especially if they're even. You know, you got 50, 60 hit points, they're swinging for 10s. You know it's 5 or 6 hits and you're done. So you don't even have to count the numbers, just know they hit me 5 times. And then once combat's over, assuming you defeat them, then you just figure out how many times they hit you. If it was 3, well, you subtract 30 points. And that's it. So it's very easy to do it that way. However, those type of scenarios don't always happen because this guy's probably going to be coming at you swinging for 8s or something stupid. Then you have to do the math. If you're really good at counting by 8s, then you can just know that, you know, you're going to need to get hit like 7 times before you drop. If you're not really good at just kind of winging that math on the fly, then you're going to have to work at it. And like I said, that's where learning to count in increments comes in handy. You know, it's like 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56. Learn to count by, you know, 8s. Learn to count by 7s. So that way when these people come at you, you know how many times they have to hit you. To me, that's more complicated than just adding or subtracting. However, it may work for you, it may be easier for you, and you already may know how to count by these increments, so it might be a faster way to do things. Now, when you have people coming at you swinging for 2 different numbers, that's when the multitasking has to come in. That's when it gets more difficult, and you really have to pay attention to who is hitting you. Now, I would say 90% of the time in boffer LARP combat, things are going slow enough that it shouldn't be a problem to be able to count and add. I mean, you're exchanging blows, you're hitting them, they're hitting you, but it's not just like whap, 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 you know, the whole time. Some games are like that. Games that are like that probably shouldn't be like that because you shouldn't be able to swing a sword that fast. A lot of games refer to that as machine gunning or multi-hitting. You know, that makes it tough, but you just have to sort of roll with those punches and do the best that you can. However, in most combats, you're going to have time to react. So there's going to be a small exchange. If you get hit twice and you know it's for 8, you know you took 16 points. If you don't get hit, then you know you didn't take any. So go through the exchange, do the math while it's happening, and then just remember where you're at. You have to be cognizant of your hit points at all times. So for example, let's say my primary LARP that I play. Let's say that I have 125 hit points, okay? It sounds like a lot, but if I'm fighting something swinging for 20 points of damage, it's not. 7 hits and I'm down. You know, like I said, you just got to figure out how much they're swinging for. However, if I have something swinging for 4, something swinging for 3, something swinging for 10, and something throwing fireballs from the back line at me for 8 points, that's a lot of different numbers to add up. Because if each of these guys hits me, you know, I'm taking like 20 points of damage, right? So you got to really be able to add this stuff up fast. You have to know 3, 4, 8, 5, whatever the numbers are, and then add them up. So what you need to do is fight. In those scenarios, you're probably going to be fighting a little bit more defensively than offensively anyhow, but you may need to dial back to even more defensively just so you can count the numbers fast enough. And we're not really going to combat tactics and stuff here. I mean, you fight however you want. Generally speaking, you know, I'll try to just get one guy at a time out of the picture rather than bouncing around to numbers, and depending on the scenario, who's hitting harder, who's I perceive as being easier to take down. There's a lot of things to calculate in, and tabletop and video games will help you out a lot with making those decisions, but you know, it's however you want to do it, and there's not a lot of real combat training out there that's going to prepare you to fight 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 people at one time, which I actually find is the appeal of these fantasy style American boffer LARPs, because when you fight the more realistic combat, you're almost always fighting one-on-one, maybe one-on-2. However, just fighting one person to me is sort of boring. I don't feel like a hero at the end of that. But if I fight 5 people at once and I walk out of that room, to me that's pretty awesome. And that's what the hit point system sort of allows you to do. So I mean, that's an appeal to me, but I don't want to get too far off track here. But the point is, you got to add up those numbers and be prepared to add up from multiple sources. When it comes to special effects, so someone's saying 8 fire, 5 lightning, 6 bludgeoning, 2 piercing, you need to just know, does any of this crap affect me? Okay, a lot of times people are saying fire, lightning, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, you know, massive, maiming, whatever. You just need to know, does any of this really matter to me? If you're not a troll, you don't take extra damage from fire, the words after it are irrelevant. Just listen to the number. Just completely block out what is said after it, unless you know it applies to you. Okay, so fire, lightning, dust, whatever the hell the call is, ignore whatever the words are after if they don't apply to you. Okay, when you NPC, probably all of that's going to mean a lot more than when you're PCing. However, if someone is hitting with you fire and for some reason you take double from fire, then you're going to need to double that immediately. And just know that you're going to be taking 16s and not 8s. So be prepared for those things. But if you're not taking the special effects, forget about anything said after the number. Just focus on the number. And like I said, really, it's practice, practice, practice that's going to get you to the point where you need to be. And that's probably not the answer anyone wanted, but that is the answer. Just practice. And after years, you will get it down. But just going to LARPs infrequently isn't going to do it. You're going to have to do some of it on your own. Now, if you're dealing with really big numbers, or if you really have a hard time counting, get something to help you out with. This right here, this is like what umpires use, or, you know, ticket takers, a lot of people, it just hangs on the hand. Now, if you're a fighter, this may not work that great in combat because you're just not going to be able to do it fast enough. You're going to be swinging your sword and trying to click this thing at the same time. So these people are like, 5, and you're like, trying to hit this thing 5 times so that it tells you took 5 points. It's going to be very, very difficult to do while you're in the middle of combat. So I don't know that this would work real well for a fighter. However, after combat, this might work well. So if you know you took 50 points or 53 points or something, you could click off, 53 times on here. And then that way, when you finally get to the healer or to the blacksmith or whatever, you can tell them, oh, hey, I took 53 points. That way you don't have to remember that number in your head. So that may be helpful in that aspect. However, I view something like this as being probably more useful for mages or somebody who has a mana pool or some sort of set numbers to pull from. So, I'm an archmage, I have 500 mana. I'm casting spells that are like 30 points, 35 points, 20 points, 8 points. That's tough to keep track of and to remember in your head. So you're casting these spells, if you're a mage in the back, you're probably going a little bit slower than the fighters up front. It's probably not going to be as fast and furious as the front line. So you have time, you do your incantation, and while you're saying your incantation, be clicking on this, your spell cost 8, I'm casting a fireball, blah, and boom, you got your 8 points on there. Yeah, this may flub once in a while, but it's going to keep you close. It's going to basically keep you honest. Just after you cast it, look at the numbers, make sure you're where you need to be, and then also this will help you remember, because some games you only have a daily pull and it never comes back. So this will really help you keep track. So if you have 40 points, and 10 o'clock at night you're looking at this and you're like, oh man, I got 24 points, but I need 30 to cast this awesome ritual. Well, you're not casting the awesome ritual because you don't have enough. So life sucks. Play a fighter instead. But I find these to be very helpful for a lot of people. And it doesn't have to be one like this. You could have something maybe on your phone or some other sort of counting device. However, I caution against pulling phones out and stuff because they break immersion. Something like this is small enough. It probably doesn't. Plus, these come in a lot of different colors. You can get them very cheaply online. You could always paint it black. You could wrap it in leather. Do whatever you want to. I mean, if you carry it around a lot, it almost looks like you're wearing a ring of some sort. And I don't think a lot of people are going to hassle you for clicking this thing off. I mean, it does make some sound, but if you're doing it in combat, no one's going to hear it anyways. But counters like these, amazing for that type of stuff. Like I said, for fighters after the battle, people that have repair points for the smithy and stuff, awesome. Mages, awesome. Just get used to using it as a tool, keep track of it, and you should be good. I mean, you could also write it down in a journal or something, but something like this to me is a lot better. I mean, if you have multiple things you need to track, like armor points, hit points, smithy points, mana points, and all kinds of stuff, you may want to just have a journal and just after each combat write down what's in there, and then be able to erase and change those whenever you get healed or re-up your mana or whatever. But these counters, phenomenal. And aside from that, like I said, really, it's just how intelligent are you? I mean, I hate to break it down like that, but people who are not able to do numbers and counting and addition and subtraction very fast are going to struggle with a system like this. That's why you need to practice. And it's not that hard to do. You just got to practice a little bit. People who are very quick, very sharp, they're going to be okay at this. There's going to be points where, you know, things do slip through, unfortunately. However, for the most part, you will be honest in your combat. I know that when you get into the big, massive battles, and you're getting hit from like arrows, and you never even heard the person call the damage because they're so far away, or you're getting hit with fireballs and all kinds of stuff, you're getting hit with by 10 people at the same time. It's very hard to keep track of those numbers. You just have to do the best that you can in those type of scenarios. And I think that that's why these type of systems aren't that appealing to a lot of people, because you can't have a beer buzz walking into combat in a system like this. You can't be, you know, buzzing off of weed, or you couldn't eat a bunch of pills or something before you walk onto the battlefield. Now, I'm not going to pretend like LARP is drug free. There's a lot of people at LARP that are just indescribably fucked up, and to me that's a shame. And you're already there, you know, for a little bit of escapism and to play a game. To have to take it to that levels, to me, is stupid. But you're not going to get around the fact that there are people that are there for different reasons, and there's people there that are going to be fucked up. And yeah, those people are going to have a really hard time doing this, because I know if I was basically drunk or fucking high, like, I'm not going to be able to count numbers in my head. You know, I'm surprised if I even been able to walk onto the battlefield. But people do it routinely, and you know, somehow they get by. And I think a lot of people like to sort of be in that buzz state, and they prefer the hit-based location games because it's real easy. And these type of games where you have to count, they're not real easy. You know, the shit's harder to do, and I think that that loses appeal for some people. I'm not trying to put anyone down or say anything. I'm just saying that people who are able to successfully play games where you have to count a lot of numbers and do a lot of rapid addition and subtraction stuff, you know, are probably a little sharper mentally, at least as far as math is concerned, than maybe you know, other games. At least people that, you know, complain about it anyhow. I've played all different types of games, and I personally don't have a problem playing any of them, but I could see how, you know, if you did struggle with math, like I said, or you're always in some sort of altered state of consciousness, or if maybe you can't hear well, if you have a very short attention span or something, that maybe games where you have to count and do a lot of math and add numbers, that might be difficult for you. And, you know, that's fine. You can probably still get by. For that type of scenario, the best thing you can do is listen for the big numbers. And this is something that works a lot when you're NPCing, because when you're playing an NPC, especially if you're like the main boss, there may come a point where you have 20 people hitting you at one time, and there's no way you're going to hear or process all those numbers if they're all being said at exactly the same time. So listen for the big numbers. I would say, for the most part, get a feel for what the generalized call is. If most people are calling 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, round it to tens. Every time you feel a hit, it's 10. It's not, you know, 100% fair way of doing it, but it's probably about as fair as you're going to get. I know some people, what they'll do is they'll just fight for like a minute and then drop. But I like to round off in those type of scenarios if necessary. Now, if everyone's swinging for like 3, 4, 5, then everything does 4 or 5. I mean, just make it easy on yourself. But, you know, give them a little bit of the benefit. As an NPC, you know, you have your own goals, your own character, you know, you want to live, of course, but ultimately, you know, your role is to let the heroes kill you and die as a player, not as the character, but as the player playing the character. Your role is basically to go out there and get squashed. But as the character, you still want to fight as hard as you can. But, you know, when you're getting hit that many times, you're going to have to do a little bit of rounding, and then just listen for the big hits. So if someone is throwing something that does 100 points of damage, 50 points of damage, get those ones for sure and add them into the total. But everybody else that's just sort of buzzing around you, round off to whatever the standard number you're hearing is. If it's 5, it's 15, 10, whatever, that's what you're going to round to. figure out how many hits you can take, just start counting the hits, or just start counting by tens, or whatever you want to do, whatever system makes it easier for you. But don't forget the big numbers, because they're going to drop you fast. And then, if all else fails, fight for 30 seconds, a minute, make the players feel like they earned it, and then drop. Or do whatever you were supposed to do. Vanish, back off, run away, whatever it is that you were supposed to do as that character. However, like I said, those aren't ideal, but a lot of times in those games it does get confusing in those massive combats, and you just got to do the best you can. But most of the time, you're going to be one-on-one, you're going to be one-on 2 or 3, and it's not that hard to do 1, 2, or 3 people swings. Most of the time, they're all swinging for the same numbers, so that makes it really easy. If you're fighting 3 goblins and they all swing for 5, you have 50 points. Like I said, you got to get hit 10 times. So this dude comes over, whacks me twice, I get hit once, that's 15 of my points. I get to get hit 7 more times before I'm at 0. So this is the best advice I can give on how to play these sort of American style boffer LARPs, where you have hit points, where you have mana points. Use counters and aids if you find them to be helpful. If you're sharp enough to do the math and remember the numbers, then that's all you need, is just your mind. However, if you're in a group where you don't have combat that often, I still think something like this would be useful, especially if you were a mage. If I played any sort of spellcasting person, I would definitely have one of these to keep track of my daily mana or my daily magic points, or whatever you want to call them. Just because this would make it real easy, and I'm never going to forget how many I have. As far as the fighter, we're healed and our armor's repaired so frequently that I don't know that there's a lot of value in this. I can remember I have 70 points left. It's not that hard to remember one number, but if you have some sort of situation where you can't remember one number, something like this is great. Get a journal, write it down, or whatever. That way when you get to the forge or blacksmith or wherever you're going, you can honestly tell them how many points that you need. And these games, there are a lot of honesty, anyways. So, there's going to be some numbers that aren't exactly right, and it is what it is. If you're 1 or 2 points off in your favor this time, maybe next time you'll be 10 off and not in your favor. There's an ebb and flow to it. Just don't be a cheater. And I have a whole video about this. It's an honor-based system. Do as good of a job as you can. And if you have 5 points left and a giant hits you for 20 points, don't shrug it off. You don't get to just soak the last hit and then run away. You're dead. You're negative 15 points. You are dead. Okay? Someone has to come over and heal you, or you're going to the cemetery. I mean, it is what it is. Honor-based systems, do the best job you can. However you want to look at it, whether you're adding up to your totals, subtracting down from your totals, whether you're counting up by increments, whether you're rounding off a little bit in the big combats, whether you're clicking a counter, just keep it as honest as you can. If it's off a little bit, sometimes it is going to be off a little bit, but as long as you honestly try as hard as you can to keep it straight, everything will be fine, and no one's ever going to call you on it. If you're a new character and I watch you take 800 points of damage, you're getting called on that. Just know your limits, know how many points, and like I said earlier in this video, if you have 10 points, someone comes out of the hole swinging for 8s, you're in the wrong place. So you either better have a good support group behind you, or you better run, or you better be the best swordsman that this realm has ever seen, because someone who can hit you twice, and if you've got to hit them 8 or 9 times, that's going to be one heck of a fight. So just be prepared, and that's the best advice I can give you on counting. I hope that you found this video helpful, and I didn't hurt anyone's feelings, but there's lots of different types of games, and lots of people have lots of different styles. I'm never going to call anyone better or worse or any style stupid, even though a lot of people do think that counting all the numbers and hit points and stuff is stupid. To me it's not. To me that's awesome. But the hit base location and all that stuff is cool too. Makes for a lot faster, probably a lot more realistic combat, but not everybody's there for realistic combat. Some people want that tabletop experience, in real life. I mean, to me, it's pretty awesome to be able to go up and fight dragons, and not be killed in one shot. To be able to be at a game for 10, 20 years, build your character up, have experience, have special skills, be able to do really kick-ass stuff, and maybe even take down that dragon. To me, that's awesome. That's D&D played, levels 1 through 10 or 1 through 20 or, whatever you're doing. And, playing the hit-based location and only ever being able to take 1 or 2 hits. Yeah, sure, that may be real, but, I'm never rushing into a dragon cave by myself. I'm never going to try to fight more than 2 or 3 people in a bar at one time. And to me, the reality of it sucks. I don't really necessarily want to play a real game. I want it to be more fantasy. And that's, my take. And that's why I like this style of LARP better. But when I play the other games where it is hit-based location stuff, that's fine. I tighten up my combat skills. I go a lot more defensive. I look for weaknesses. You parry a lot more. And you focus less on the DPS and more on the covering your ass. So they're all good games. Let's just agree that people have different taste, and if you do play a game where you have to count stuff, get one of these or practice counting in your head. Do some drills. There's probably stuff online you can find. Play more tabletop. Practice counting up in increments, and eventually you'll get super fast, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And next thing you know, you'll be out on the field and you'll be counting other people's numbers while you're counting your own, and just laughing or scoffing at them because they're not dropped yet. And yeah, if you like this video, please click like, consider subscribing to the channel. Obviously I have a lot more videos that will be coming out. I do weekly videos, and if you want notified of those, click the little bell. If you care to support this channel in any way, I do have a Patreon account. You can also go to my Ko-Fi or Coffee and do like sort of a one-time tip through that site. And as always, adventure on.